Welcome back to a Bear Down segment on the Coach Steve Show. It's back from a hiatus. Hello, Zach. How's it going?
Hello, Coach. I'm doing good. It's been too long, but I'm glad to be here, man. It's a season that definitely just needed to be over with. I'm just glad we get to talk. Like I said, it's been too long between episodes for you and I.
Yeah, because like we always say, I'm actually a coach, so I have to have responsibilities and
Right.
coach basketball, which is it's Groundhog Day every day. Uh, you go to work in the morning, it's dark out. You get home at night, oh, it's dark out. It's cool. It's amazing. It's Groundhog Day every day. But there wasn't much to talk about. The Bears were terrible, I guess is the nice way to put it.
Pretty much.
But a lot's happened. A lot has happened. But yes, we're back with a Bear Down segment. We're now in the off season. The Bears ended up, what was a record? 3-14, I
Yes,
believe.
sir. Worst in the NFL.
Yep, Bears ended up being 3-14, last in everything, I think, besides rushing offense maybe was up there, but that's about it. We were ranking
Historic Bears rushing effort though. That's the thing, because I think it's most in a season that they've ever had.
Yeah, but does that mean much?
It's a silver lining. I know that's not, maybe that won't repeat itself arguably next year when they are going to be adding more to help bolster the air attack that needs bolstering. But yeah, it's something I guess you can take home with you.
Yeah, Justin Fields had the most rushing yards, 1,143. Cole Kmet had the receiving yards of 544. Nicholas Morrow had 116 tackles. Eddie Jackson had 4 interceptions. So those are some positives there, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields' passing yards was 2,242 to end the year. 3-14. Did not win a game since the Patriots,
Yeah,
if you want to put that into perspective.
Longest losing streak in Bears history this year. That also was a record that wasn't talked about because, well, no one should want to bring that up anyway. But yeah, this year was the longest losing streak in Chicago Bears football history. Sad to say that.
Yeah, we didn't get a chance to talk about all those games, or we're not going to, but I will say this, at least during the stretch at the beginning, Dolphins, Lions, Falcons, at least it was competitive. At least there were some things that we could have taken positively from that game. That's when my life got busy and I had to listen to the BS from Chicago sports podcast media experts, quote unquote, start to ramble off. And then as the year went on, it got worse and worse. I stopped following all their podcasts because no longer handle the stupidity of people. And I don't care if they know it. But if they offered me a job, I would take it. But until then, they are idiotic, is what I'll say.
Hey, Kaplan just left NBCSN. You could you could go and talk about that if you want.
Oh, I would love that job. The security of it, I would call out everybody. I would call out everybody if I had that
Yeah, I
type
mean,
of
hey,
security.
I was gonna say Kaplan. That was part of his role. You could fill in that void pretty good.
And I'm pretty cheap. Like not cheap, cheap, but you don't have to pay me his type of money. You know, if you paid me, what did he make a year? A lot of money, probably.
Probably solid for being that market, and
You
for
could
his
pay me.
tenure alone.
You could pay me 85 grand a year, and I'll be happy. Just put me there.
I'd
But you got
take
to pay
that.
for all my expenses to travel.
Well, sure. I mean, you gotta get, if you're gonna be at a place like that, you gotta get the incentive, man. Like you have to get those things. But like, I'm with you. You get the travel cost and some of the other things like that covered that are like essential to your job. Like make sure that NBC Universal covers that, Comcast. Then
Mm-hmm.
you're golden. I do all that.
Yeah. But this episode, we are going to be all over the place. We will definitely not get to everything because we don't have time. We do have other things to do, but things happened. I don't even know where to start. I guess the Bears get the number 1 overall pick, which has not happened since I think the 40s for the Bears, I think is what they said.
1947. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, So the Bears have never been in that position before. It came out that Chase Claypool, we actually got rid of what, our 32nd pick or something like that, ended up being in the first round,
Hmm.
I believe. So we had talked
Right,
about that
because
before.
yeah, the Dolphins lose a pick. From what I have from my recollections, just because of their some of the findings of their supposed tanking that they were talking about.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that gets removed.
yeah.
But yeah, that it pretty much becomes a first round pick is what it is. And I know that's technicality, but it is kind of the case. So the Bears could already have had the 32nd. Plus, for how much people have been discussing, that since we don't need a QB, that we'd be trading back. That would have been nice. Not gonna lie. Having potentially, two first rounders essentially would have been pretty good.
Yeah, because looking back, Chase Claypool has the talent, but for the Bears, did not really do much. But the experts are going to say that he just wasn't around enough and not used the right way and all this other stuff. And so that's what the experts are going to say. But then you shouldn't have traded for him to begin with if this was going to be the issue.
I
So,
know. I don't like the deal more and more, and it comes down to the contract that he is on because if he wasn't going to perform this year, which sure, whatever, it's hard to get into a system right away. And apparently there was talks that Luke Getzey didn't want to adjust it to make it easier for Claypool, so he kept status quo with what they're doing. So whatever, but keep this in mind. He was on basically half of his year and a half left on his rookie contract with this trade. Didn't do too much this year, really, besides a few, I would say, every once in a while, highlight one-on-one situations, and then kind of disappeared for most of the season. Even when we're talking about the period where Darnell Mooney's out, well, I know some people are saying, well, Justin Fields is throwing to like breadcrumbs out there and only Cole Kmet, but pardon my language, but Chase Claypool, why are you not then actively trying to get him going and getting positivity his way? I don't know, but that wasn't working. And now you are going into next year. This is one of the issues Ryan Poles is going to have to deal with. It's kind of minor in the grand scheme if you think about it, but it still is there where Chase Claypool's on his 1 year remaining of his deal. It is a contract year for him coming up, which could bring the best out of players. Pressure does sometimes create diamonds, and he has stated that he wants to work with Justin Fields in the offseason a lot, which I bet he will. But
mhm.
you are basically banking on next year to make that essentially first round pick pay off. With that forfeited Miami pick, which was for tampering again, mind you, that is a first rounder. So that is something you are risking. If you don't pull this off, that is a miss, sadly. But it's only accordance to whatever else Chicago has to deal with. It's funny how that is actually like a minor thing compared to other stuff they need to pick up.
Mhm. Um, but people don't want to talk about that either. They want to talk
Yeah, I mean
about
that one, that's what
anything
annoys me is
else.
people skirt that issue too, and I'm like, guys, it's still an issue. They missed on that pick. Like, accept it. At least right now they're missing on it. It could change, but
Right.
right now it feels like a pretty big miss, or at least a pretty
Well,
big miss on the trade. So
this whole year made me less and less love being a Bears fan. It actually has forced me to sit there and go, I'll be a Bears fan no matter what, but it forced me to want to sit there and go, do I go be a fan of somebody else? That's how bad it
mm,
started to get. Um, that will never happen. I might go root for another team. Like, I think I secretly was a Lions fan at some points. There was points in this year where I was like, I'm a Lions fan. I really like what they're doing. Or somebody else, not the fact that they were winning, but I just liked them.
sure.
And the I knew Bears fans were bad during the Matt Nagy times. Not all. I shouldn't say all. I should just say there were people. This year was extremely bad overall with the flip flopping of opinions, the flip flopping of people being dumb if you're not on the Justin Fields bandwagon
Hmm.
because ESPN, Fox Sports, they wanted him to be good so bad. And there was so many excuses made, and one of them is the Claypool thing. They want to talk about it. They don't want to say everything we just said of the pick. Like we could sit here and say they messed up. I mean, they took a risk, and the risk is not now. Next year, he could go off. Next year, if they keep him, he could go off and have a huge year. We can go back and say, okay, now we're getting the picks worth. But for right now, he was literally non-existent for the Bears. He literally had 140 yards receiving in his time
Mm-hmm.
and no touchdowns. Like that's not producing for anybody. You know, Pettis had more yards, Montgomery had more yards, St. Brown had more yards. I know they were around longer, but if you're this athlete and you're supposed to be able to go up and get the ball, I don't believe that they didn't try to get him the ball. I don't believe that because when he first got into the game, they threw to him right away. So
Yeah.
the record of they're not going to try to get him the ball, that's BS. They're just trying to find some excuse to defend the draft pick that they did.
I
And
don't know. Like I said, he's supposed to be part of this whole grand scheme for next year. So like, yeah, I don't know. I do think that needs to. It's if it wasn't hard enough valued this year, like next year, it's got to be even harsher because again, 1 year deal. You want to decide on, hey, is this guy worth keeping around? Is he contributing? Like I will specify, like the Bears don't have like a Kenny Galladay situation or anything like the Giants do. Like it's not like you're locked in with money or anything, but it's just like it's annoying because for all the talk about like we want to stockpile picks and then you do a trade like this, and it does remove a second rounder that was going to be high. That's what I guess is annoying. So, you hope he pans out, but we'll find out. That's going to come up probably within, this next 365 days. We'll see.
yeah,
I'm
because
hoping the guy
the
gets
other
like
thing
900. I hope he gets like 900 to 1,000 yards. That to me is worth keeping, but he won't break the bank or anything. So
no, because I guess that's the other thing about this season. Before we move on to the big topics that people have been freaking losing their minds on, is I thought this would be like a year or so rebuilding. It has now come to the
mhm.
big slap to the face that this could be 3 seasons worth of building because of how, unless they do some, like the thing no one's talking about is what kind of free agents can we go get? Everybody
Yeah,
is talking about the money we have, but you have to be able to lure people in. And the only people you've heard, people are all about getting Hopkins out of Arizona. Like trade for him, trade this pick to get him. We could afford it now because we have this money. I don't know what free agents they're going to get. I have not dug deep into that at all. Everybody seems to be worried about the draft. Everybody seems to worry about trading the number 1 pick to somebody to get something, and that's fine. But I think for me was okay. We have this money next year. Cool. We're going to have picks. Next year will be better. The way it's
mhm.
going, I don't know if it'll be better. I don't know. I would like to think it would be better, and it might be. But what's better? What's better? 7-9 or whatever it is. 7-10. I mean, that'd be better. But I don't think
I
the
think
Bears are going to be that.
so. I don't see them being best case scenario. They're a wild card team. That is what I think a lot of people assume for next year. I think midway through the year we saw some flashes with the guys healthy and went, yeah, maybe we can see them, jumping up and being that potential conference, or sorry, division, championship type of conversation for next year, depending on the moves. Right now, I think next year my highest ceiling is if they can get a wild card at like 9-8 or 10-7. That is the best of the best type of scenario for me. Um, Otherwise, I'm with you. I see next year as like if we can get to 500, that's pretty good progress to me. And that's just because there's
Uh,
a lot of stuff to fill. And yes, there's a lot of money. They're going to get a lot of picks. I also think that unless if Will Anderson comes out and impresses that much, I think they stick with that number 1. But if they don't, then they trade back. So you have all this capital. Think about this is the scenario. You have a lot of capital, you have a lot of money. I don't know if they will jump the same way like 2018 to 2017 was. That's not what I'm seeing. I think it's a wild card team at best if you land everything correctly. If you don't, it's a 2-year rebuild. That's what I think a lot of people were maybe thinking is it's probably going to be at the very least, I think 2 years where you're going to be,
Mhm.
you know, you pay your stars that you want back or key components you want back. You pick up guys in free agency over the next 2 seasons that are going to be available. I mean, some folks are talking about T. Higgins if they don't for example, he's not there with Cincinnati in 2024, that he could be available. I know D Hop's been talked about this year, but it depends. How patient are you? Do you want D Hop, or do you save that money and do you wait a season again, pick up maybe someone more better reliable role players like DJ Chark, for example? He's available
Mhm.
after this season. He's already on the free agent market from Detroit. If Detroit doesn't get him, uh, you can get him. That's another reliable, higher quality receiver than some guys you have on that roster right now. And then what if you wait till 2024 and you pick up like a T. Higgins or something?
Right.
There's a few options. Oh, you have a lot of money and you got a lot of picks. Uh, I will say this though: use a good chunk of your cap. Don't use all of it, in my eyes, um, because you don't want to be a Chris Ballard where you're hoarding money. I think you still want to spend reasonable if you want to get yourself out of the cellar. If you have the capability of doing it, do it. But don't totally bankrupt yourself on the cap end. Just there's a good middle ground, I guess what I'm saying. I live in Indianapolis. I hear about Chris Ballard all the time, and I watch how the Colts operate themselves. One of the things that they have burned themselves on for years is that they do not know how to spend their cap space. And you don't want to
Right.
be like the Indianapolis Colts, where it's almost too little too late. You've missed free agency opportunities because you didn't know how to spend that cap. Or you were waiting on saying, well, I'm going to pay these guys that I drafted. Like, that's great. You should think about that. But don't miss out on swings if you can reasonably land swings.
Right. Um, because I think that's another thing people don't realize or talk about is they don't have to spend all of their cap space next year. So that's why this
Mm-hmm.
is more and more reality of it's going to be 2024, 2025 when the Bears are back talking about winning and competing in playoffs, hopefully, because of what this plan is. But another thing this has opened eyes to is there are so many holes to fix if you really want to break
There,
it down.
there are, there are.
Uh, the defense, you don't have a defensive line that's consistent. Linebackers are just kind of a hodgepodge when they made all that. It's just a hodgepodge of linebackers. They were athletic. I thought they tackled hard when you actually watch them. Just a hodgepodge.
Yeah.
Safeties and corners, I think, are the only spots that you can think about. But like Eddie Jackson was injured again. So are you looking at getting a safety? Are you looking at trying to find a good backup? So there's a holes. Offensively, apparently the offensive line completely sucked, even though I thought they got better when they found a consistent starting lineup.
So here's what's crazy to me is I think PFF came out with their ratings for lines, and Chicago finished 14th overall in the PFF ranking, like in terms of overall pass protection. Although I believe it was they were 24th in pass pro. A lot of it was
Mhm.
made up by their run blocking, but I mean they're 14th overall towards them, which I guess for how good they are with the run game in terms of making holes,
Mhm.
I guess if you balance that out, that's kind of where it would land, is that happy middle ground, because pass blocking, I'll admit, was atrocious. Like, there's no spinning on that. So they still have to pick up new guys. I mean, like, let's be honest, no one wants to see Sam Mustipher back as center next year.
Right.
Um, if he is back, people will be revolting down Michigan Avenue, or at least down Lakeshore Drive towards the stadium, or they'll go out to House Hall. One of the three options. There's a few places you could probably choose to show your displeasure. There's guys like that. I think Braxton Jones needs another season of just another offseason of just kind of developing. Although a lot of people like Jones overall, so showed some signs this last past year. Don't F around with Tevin Jenkins. Let him start at the beginning and just he's good. Don't F around with changing him out during mid games or like whatever in the offseason you were doing. Like,
Right.
play him normally. He deserves that spot. He played up to his spot this year, you know. and then figure out what you want to do with like Cody Whitehair and company, you know, with the rest of the depth, because I think that's the big discussion is like guys that were maybe okay or like in terms of Whitehair's case used to be pretty solid and I think had kind of an off year, you know, when he was at least when he was healthy, you know.
Doug Kramer coming back, I think, will be
Yeah,
huge.
now Kramer, yeah, that's one I think people wanted to see more like you're talking, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, I thought the offensive line got better because again, people don't want to talk about it. You know, the CHGOs of the world don't want to talk about all the shuffling of the O line, and they want to blame the whole O line for everything. And I'm not saying they got off scot free; they did not play well. But did we realize all the shuffling? You watch the like different starting lineups, but you got these podcast shows who I called out before. It's just O line. You just push people. Like, that's all you do. Like they don't understand that if you're moving guys around, like if you're really, really, really good. So if you're a really good offensive lineman, you can go from right tackle to left tackle and it'll bother you for a couple snaps and you'll figure out because you're that good. But those are few and far between. So if you are a decent lineman and you go from right tackle to left tackle, you're going to struggle a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Right guard to left guard, center to guard, guard to center. Then all of a sudden during the game, well, let's pull him out and put this guy in. It doesn't work because you don't have this cohesiveness of communication. And do they understand the blocking scheme? Do you have to tell people? Like, people don't understand how O-line works all the time. And yes, I guess at the end of the day, if you want to be a jackass about it, you just push him or keep him away from the quarterback. But people don't want to talk about that when you watch the Eagles and the Buffalo Bills. I'm curious to know, do they shuffle in and out their O-line? I'm curious to know if they have different starting lineups. And maybe they do because of injuries. Packers, it happens. But when the Packers do it, they have really, really good O-linemen. So it doesn't bother them to be moved around. When you've got a makeshift offensive line built, this is going to happen. But I personally thought during that losing stretch, but we're losing by 1, we're losing by 2 or whatever, I didn't hear complaints about it against the Patriots. There was no complaints about the O-line during that game. And really, so that's my big issue with that in the offense is the wide receivers. They keep saying we don't have wide receivers. And they're right and they're not right. Because, again, these experts, quotes end quote, hated these receivers, saying Justin Fields has no help. We'll get to Justin Fields soon. Don't worry, that's coming up. We're building up to that moment. But I didn't hear complaining about them when they beat the 49ers. I didn't hear complain about them when we beat the Patriots. I didn't hear complain about them all the time when we were starting off that losing streak. It was when it started to get bad. Then they wanted to start blaming the receivers. And all we heard was, they're no good. They're no good. I mean, I thought Mooney could be a guy, then he got hurt. Didn't they just give St. Brown an extension?
Yeah, they gave him a 1 year, like $1.25 million extension. Nothing crazy. So
he must be doing something right.
Yeah. Well, he's now the thing he gets good critiques on is he's a good run blocker. That's a lot of stuff I've heard is, his run blocking, and I've seen it too. It's pretty solid. So they probably picked him up, I think, for that and some depth, at least for guys that know the system. So it's not expensive. That's the best part of it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if St. Brown, like I St. Brown, if anything, next year I more hope is like a receiver 4, 5. I think some folks are hoping Velus Jones keeps his positive progression he had at the end of the year going and kind of overtakes that. But we'll see. It all depends on who they want to pick up, maybe in the free agent market.
Right. Running back, I thought was fine. Montgomery didn't stay healthy. Herbert just is not horrible, but he's not a great pass protector, and that's
not at all. It's such an Achilles heel for him. That's what's crazy. I think his running ability. Some people think, and I agree. There's times where I think he's better than Monty in certain aspects, but dude is god awful in pass protection. It's his main Achilles heel.
So they might be in the market for a running back because Herbert will be back, but Montgomery, as of right now, is going to be a free agent. So curious to see if they sign him or not.
Yeah.
Or if they draft a running back or they go after one. I know Saquon Barkley keeps getting talked about to go to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
but
I mean,
he risked
I don't
that.
know if you, but do you want to do that? Like, to me, you're better off just retaining Montgomery for a reasonable amount and just running your two-headed monster like you were doing at that point. You know,
That's what I
like
think.
Saquon and is like would be like the same for any team as like picking up Christian McCaffrey like the 49ers did. Like, yeah, sure, but to me, you already have a three-headed monster in the run game. The run game to me is your least concerning facet of that offensive setup. You know, it's all about, to me, building the air attack. You know, next year it should be all about building the air attack and getting Justin Fields comfortable with, you know, hey, we don't want to do as many design runs. We don't want to get you as killed as often. You know, we want to see you grow as a passer on a more consistent basis during the season. So,
You just evaluate him. Experts say we can't do that.
I kind of did. I was hoping maybe I'd get away with that, but you know what? I'm sorry. I realize that I am getting someone knocking on my door saying "shut the hell up." So I'm going to.
Brian Clark's going to knock on your door.
This is the last time I mention it. Sorry, people.
No,
my
no,
bad.
screw that. Screw that. I'm evaluating his ass because that'll be the next thing we do. Because
I know you will.
I get fiery on Twitter.
You've already been. I am aware. Is all.
Like I already have I have the New York Giants stats pulled up from their receivers because we want to talk about targets and receptions. I'm all ready to go because it's ridiculous. And then there's Justin Fields. So maybe I should just ask, do you trade Justin Fields because you have this first round pick and Bryce Young is sitting there at the table?
No, I have thought this one through. I don't think you should do that yet. I mean, to me, you know, you can. Here's my debate on this is, you know, say you trade back, okay? I think of this as a two-pronged thing. You trade back in that first round pick, you get a first round pick for next year. Now, say that team sucks again. This is contingency plans in my eyes. If Justin Fields next year doesn't elevate himself beyond what he's done with passing this past season, Ryan pulls a pro gamer move and basically has a first round pick in his pocket to have a contingency plan for 2024, because 2024 also is going to have some reasonable quarterback options. Keep that in mind. So I say this year, you still build around him, but you are putting pieces together to where no matter what after next season, 2024, you can go in, figure out if you are still going with the same course at your QB situation or if you're changing, and work with those pieces that should work for whoever you put behind center. So you're basically safeguarding yourself one way or another. I think you build around Fields, but you're still building for whoever is the best in terms of getting a QB that can actively and capably throw games that not throw games, but, you know, execute a offense that's explosive and is an air attack primarily that I think people want in Chicago. So that's how I'd do it. I don't think you trade this year. I think next year is when you debate that if things don't go the way they need to this coming season.
Yeah, because I want to save my we're going to evaluate Justin Fields at the end. I just want to get through the draft part because this is a huge topic. Because it's been talked about, even though polls said, "Oh yeah, he'll start next year." There's no rhyme or reason as to why Fields is Poles' guy because he did not draft him. Like you said, we don't know. We don't know what's going on in Poles' head. So I think it's not off the table. I won't be shocked if he does. If he comes out and trades him for more picks, I will not be shocked. Everybody else will. Everybody in Bears land was going to be shocked. I'm not. I'm not saying he's going to. A couple things can happen here. One, he can trade the first round pick and do something with it and keep Fields. Two, he can trade Fields, get more draft picks, which is what Bears fans want. We want all these draft picks for some reason.
Yeah,
so
the first two options you're talking, yeah.
Second,
that's about it.
He could draft Bryce Young and keep Justin Fields for a plan.
Yeah.
That was also talked about. Because now, if Justin Fields doesn't do well next year, doesn't progress, he could still trade him, get something. You can get a different quarterback. Now Bryce Young stepping up. Now I will defend Fields and the Bryce Young thing. To me, if you draft Bryce Young and you keep Fields, you're just drafting the same guy, in my opinion. But if you look at stats, because people want to go by stats, Justin Fields went to Georgia, couldn't beat out to be the starter. So he left and went to Ohio State. First year Ohio State 2019, he threw for 3,273 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. Very good year. But again, you have 3 or 4 first-round wide receivers and offensive linemen and 2 running backs that average 125 yards a pop per game, 2 of them. 2020 COVID year, Justin Fields throws for 2,100 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Struggled against Indiana, who had a good team, and struggled against Northwestern. Should have lost those games. And we draft him. Here is Bryce Young. 2020 COVID year, he was a freshman, did not really play. 2021 throws for 4,872 yards, 47 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Then this year, 3,328 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. And he was hurt. He got hurt for a game or 2. So to me, you're drafting the same guy. I think Bryce Young is a better winner. Now you can make the debate, well, he has guys to throw to as well, just like Justin Fields. So that's why I really don't know how you do this. But another option that I like and people don't like is I want Gardner Minshew in Chicago. Because I'm looking at the landscape. Love Gardner Minshew.
But as a QB room person, though, right? Like I because I've talked to you about this. I don't want him starting. You know,
I would not be mad about him starting, but I also understand that if they got him, it would have to be in a backup role because they're so committed to Fields. But you need someone to push Fields because as of right now, I don't think anybody's like challenging him. So you bring Minshew in, who, I mean, he was in Jacksonville, who had nobody that I know of. 21 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Last year, Philadelphia, he didn't play much. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Now he's 3-3 this year. But I mean, Jacksonville, I think you just need a guy in there to push Fields. I think you need a guy in there to where if Fields does not progress as a passer, you have somebody that can be thrown in and understand. Or you go get Derek Carr, but I don't know if that's part of the plan of getting this older quarterback in. Because Gardner Minshew has not been around that long. I was just looking at the landscape of the quarterbacks. Me and my friend back home, Coach West, he loves Gardner Minshew. We just need somebody that understands how to win in the NFL with less. Because, but who is that guy? I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Derek
look,
Carr's possibility, but
I mean, I'm looking at the dude. Look, I look at the Giants and I see a team that, you know, for all we complain about, I mean, that's a now 10-7 roster that just upset the Minnesota Vikings with what I thought was a team that wasn't going to be there. You know, yeah, that's someone I had. You know, if you're talking winning with less, that's the model right there. You know, and credit the Giants. Keep this in mind: they have the 3rd highest cap space in the NFL. It's not close to the Bears. It's still like only 54 million, but 54 million, you still can do a good chunk with. You know, so.
yes.
It's a fascinating scenario to me. But yeah, I mean, this year, like I said, you're going to see the coaching. A lot of people have, you know, I think they punted on evals for the coaching for sure, especially the GM. Next year, those gloves do come off. And I've seen there have been folks like us that have said next year those gloves do come off and that they need to. You know, you have all this cap space and picks. You do need to start showing it, you know, because basically with the amount of space you've created and how much has been cut from the team, you are basically setting up what Bears football will most likely be for probably the next 3 to 5 years in what it's going to look like. Unless you do the contingency plan setup that I'm debating you have ready with trading back. You know,
Right.
If that's your only piece, that's the problem. For example, like if you're like next year, if we turn to the Jets, which I don't think you can say he'll be like that, Fields will be at all like Zach Wilson. I'm not saying that, but like say you have it where the situation is everything's great except we need QB play to be better. That's what I'm talking about. So
Right. And then
not
I
and
wanted to throw this.
not that it's like Zach Wilson. I'm just telling you that it's if it happens to be that way, where defense is there, offensive line's back fully there, you have talented youngish receivers or receiving core that should be able to do what it needs to, and you aren't winning games. That's when I start questioning stuff, and then you consider things for the offseason. So
Right.
yeah.
So for the Bears on ESPN, they have every person that got thrown to. And so like targets. So like Cole Kmet was targeted 69 times. He had 50 receptions.
Mm-hmm.
So the Bears has 359 targets. Receptions was only 223. So they dropped 136 balls thrown to them. New York Giants, 489 targets. They had 346 catches. So they dropped 143.
Mm-hmm.
So they dropped more passes than the Bears wide receivers. And the Giants are still in the playoffs. And I'm not saying the Giants are the worst team. The Bears are obviously the worst team. And this might be a stupid argument because I just now did this. I didn't have this planned. I was just looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
The people that said the Bears wide receivers were terrible and they can't catch, they make Justin Fields look bad while he throws them perfect balls. And you see on Twitter where they put a capital letter, a lowercase letter, capital K, that thing. Justin Fields can't throw. The receivers are terrible. Then why do they have more drops or less drops than the Giants?
I don't know.
Is that Daniel Jones because he's better? That's not what I'm getting at. But you look at the Giants, do they have this amazing throw off the charts wide receivers?
No.
They have Darius Slayton, who had 724 yards. That's a lot. But
Hodgins came on later in the year, but he wasn't full season breaking the bank for them. I mean, Kenny Golladay is supposed to be that main guy in terms of contract, and he only caught one touchdown this year. Like, he's been the biggest flop in recent NFL history in terms of contract status.
Saquon Barkley, he was the most yards after catch for the Giants. Darius Slayton was 262 yards after catch. Cole Kmet had 286. Same, Dave Montgomery had 283. So, like, you didn't have slouches. So this whole notion that these wide receivers were just terrible. I'm not saying they were great. They were young. They're young. It's a system change for them as well. Play calling, I didn't think was great at the beginning of the year. And even during the losing streak, I thought it was better than what it was. I thought they ran routes harder. I thought they caught the ball better because there were times where they're like, they didn't catch the ball. And I'm like, look, in a game, you can find stats. Oh, he got the ball thrown to him 3 times. He caught it twice. So to me, I would take those odds. It doesn't have to be 3 for 3. But these podcast guys like to say that because there's no film. You'd have to go find the film to prove, like, well, was that third or that first drop right in the hands? Was it poked out by the defense, which is considered a drop? And I could deep dive into all that. I just don't have the time. I have the film. I just don't have the time to go through every single pass that was made. I do know for a fact that there are teams out there that, because here's the big debate. Imagine if Justin Fields had Jefferson. Imagine if he had A.J. Brown. And imagine if he had this guy. Imagine if he had this guy. Well, I could say the same thing about the Giants. Imagine if you put them on the Giants. Imagine if you put them on the Jaguars. Imagine, so these teams that find a way to win, you can't continue to make the debates. Well, we got to find that guy. Imagine if he got that guy. Imagine if Hopkins was on the team. You can't continue to make that argument. Now, would that make them better? Absolutely it would. But I've seen Tom Brady before not have Randy Moss and have, these kind of receivers similar-ish to the Bears, and they've done well. I've seen people do well with that. Like, I don't know what to tell people, but I am sick and tired of, seeing this because to me, before we get into Justin Fields, it's a team aspect. So to me, my whole argument to people has always been I'm going to blame the quarterback. I'm going to blame the O line. I'm going to blame the receivers. I'm going to blame the play calling because when you lose, it all goes together. I'm going to blame the defense for putting them in bad spots. Why? You traded everybody away. You got rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
So what's going to happen? Roquan Smith is getting paid now, and I'm glad he's getting paid because he played very well when he got to the Ravens. It just continued.
No, he deserved that bank. I mean, honestly, I mean, you look at, I mean, for crying out loud, yesterday you look at that matchup against the Bengals. That's one poor decision of jumping over the line away from that defense smothering Cincinnati, and we could be talking about Baltimore moving on to the next round. You know, I mean, to me, they paid him what they needed to, and it's funny because, you know, I I guess Chicago didn't think of him as a $20 million man, but you know, many others in the NFL apparently did. So, you know, there you have it there. I mean, sure, Baltimore's doing its own path. They got things to figure out. Clearly they have Lamar Jackson still to figure out, but you know, he's gone. I was kind of wondering like, hey, you know, we probably could give him that amount of space. We have that cap space to pay him, and not to mention that we also, if we discover, like, here's the thing, hypothetical, we discover Jack Sanborn midway through the season because, as I would say, Nick Morrow and Johnson were not, to me, they were average, very average. But if you put Jack Sanborn in and Roquan at the same time, could you imagine how ahead of the game we'd be in the linebacker core for next year?
Mm-hmm.
We'd be there. We're one reasonable signing away. So,
Yep.
you know, I mean, it drove me crazy. But again, that comes to them. They need to figure stuff out. That is on the GM for at least picking people up in your draft or through free agency, in particular. Speaking of that, I actually want to bring up a few options for next year's free agency, or for this coming free agency, for guys we might look at here. So, some notable signings. One of them you already listed off, by the way. Darius Slayton's going to be available this year. DJ Chark, as we said. Let's see here. Marvin Jones from the Jacksonville. I don't know if I'd want him, though, just because of the age. Juju Smith-Schuster, but I guess that's the question. Do you want those two teammates rejoining on the same roster? You know, I mean, Schuster had a reasonable year, but I wouldn't know if it was worth, like, giving him money, you know, like,
right.
anything. Jacoby Myers, New England, he'll be available. Alan Lazard, you know, if you want to enhance the running game, you can have him. Jarvis Landry, he'll be available, but credit, he's also in the back. He's now pushing 30. So at that point, to me, you're better off just trading for D-Hop if you want to go for D-Hop.
Right. I would think you go for D-Hop in my opinion, but then do you want to have that baggage too? Because you got to remember suspension.
Well, no, that's gone. He did that this year.
Yeah, but do you want to? I don't know. Do you want to deal with that or not? Who knows?
I mean, as long as he understood what happened there, and they, you know, they're fine. My deal is that he supposedly wants an extension to his current deal. So that is what you're going to have to balance is, you know, he's going to be 30 this year, which isn't unreasonable. There still is good production from guys that are pushing 30. I mean, AJ Green, you know, has still made an extra 2 years out of his career, you know, playing in Arizona because he's been a great supporting role, or was arguably a number 2 option the year prior with the Cardinals. So, you know, guys can still play up in that age range. The thing is, how long do you have the deal for? To me, whatever deal he signs, and just so I can double check this, I would say you don't want more than 3 years if you're going to bring him on for this type of extension or whatever. From last I checked, I believe he only has 2 years on so he has 2 years on his deal next year. If you extend him, give him, to me, no more than an extra 2-year extension, with maybe an easy way of opting to let him go for year 4. But
Yeah.
if he wants out and you want to get somebody like that and you want to kickstart something, that is available. And to me, it still fits the contingency plan that I have referenced in my discussions, because even if Fields and that setup doesn't work and you get everything and you want to move on 2024 possibly, you still can have the contingency plan of a young guy that gets a number one receiver like that available to him.
That is true. And I want to point out Jacksonville Jaguars had 180 drops. So that's still more than the Bears. I'm just pointing
Yeah,
that out there.
yeah, which that killed me this year is, Trevor Lawrence didn't really get talked about until the end of the year, even though he had to me, an arguably, as good of a season in terms of production. I did find that funny, but Fields is a runner right now, and what he's been doing dual threat wise, pretty exciting. I just hope it keeps going next year. So that's the thing. But yeah. I mean, I think D Hop fits, and plus, here's the other banker. Well, let's add this in. You're probably not going to give up a first rounder for him now because of the age portion, and you're going to have to make some, and you're going to. You're going to also have to give concessions because, well, remember, Arizona, we're taking on this contract. So we can give you like a second or third, like maybe like, what if you do like, here's the thing, give a second and maybe like a second for this year or something or next year. And then like at least a third for next year or like something like that. Basically, you wouldn't go up at first. There's no way that he's going to be worth the first round value at this point in his career. Second rounder, right. You probably give a second rounder up for him. At least one. If not, maybe you push two where it's like one for 2023, maybe 2024, depending on benchmarks he hits in the season. Mm-hmm. You know, kind of like a Carson Wentz deal, but for a receiver.
Right. Philadelphia Eagles had more drops too. I'm listening to you, but I just want to point that out there.
I know what you're saying. You're basically going through the list at this point.
But no, Hopkins, I think, should be, if you're looking at a veteran receiver, figure out how to get him. Mock drafts I've done, which are not realistic, it's been taken as a second rounder, like giving up a second round pick for him. And then, like you said, maybe a year extension. If you do 2 years, that's it. It has to be that third year guarantee. That fourth year is you can be hopped out or you can stay and we'll pay whatever that fourth year is. I do like the idea of having Hopkins in there. And then Mooney, is he coming back? Is he still?
I mean, Mooney, they need to figure out because he's also another one they have to sign on this season. So I would say you re-sign Darnell Mooney.
I would say if you have Mooney, Hopkins, Kmet, Claypool, and St. Brown with a young Pringle whatever back around. I think to me that's a pretty decent receiver core.
See, I don't know if you bring Byron Pringle back unless it's a cheap deal like St. Brown got, where it's like a 1 year, $1 million something kind of thing. Because
if it's cheap, bring him back.
Obviously because he had injury issues, you can't give him that. You would be like, here, we could use you for the depth, which is probably what Pringle fits best at this point. If you're debating on how they build the receiving core this season, since that's so much of the talk, is he probably should be a depth piece. Start building like how Kansas City has it, where it's like you have guys that are good, like that could fit in from like a second string or third string level at that point.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, because that's what I would think, because of the injuries we even had this year. Like, think about it. Like, if Mooney gets hurt again, who do you put in there? And so maybe that's a good starting way for next year to say, okay, here's these weapons. If you can somehow bring Montgomery back, now you have him and Herbert around that, at least from that aspect. Now, the O-line, you have to take care of itself. Then you're sitting there going, okay, we're kind of set here, and people can be happy because, look, we have some wide receivers coming back. We have Claypool on a contract year to see, like, okay, maybe he'll play better knowing he has to play well in order to make money. Mooney, coming off of an injury, will come back stronger. So you have those pieces put there. And then you have Hopkins, who has been around, is a deep ball threat or a yards after catch threat. I think that's maybe how you go for it. And with the dysfunction of Arizona, maybe he'll one out. Like sitting there
Yeah.
going, okay, get me out of here.
Yeah, I think he already, at least if my understanding, Hopkins is either wanting out or the Cardinals are debating what they want to do with him. But I mean, if you get D Hop and basically you try and work on getting Claypool 100% involved, like, and again, this will get judged harder next year. But like, if you're really like you traded a second rounder for him, so you have to get what you can out of him, to justify that value. So build the depth like that. You definitely re-sign Mooney. I think, and some people have argued differently, because RB value anymore is a complete crapshoot. Either you get generational talents like Derrick Henry or like a Saquon or like a Christian McCaffrey, and credit McCaffrey also, that was being questionable up until this year because of injuries, but I digress. You get someone like that talented and you pay them, or you get someone that's on the fringe, like a David Montgomery, really good running back, has a motor, is able to churn extra yards almost every run, and is 1,000-yard to sub-1,000-yard rusher almost every season, but doesn't get that recognition or is that height and level. So right now the question is, okay, well, you have Herbert there. To me, good production, but like we talked, can't block. So you bring him back as well, and you have the cap to do it. Bring guys back that deserve to be there. Mooney to me does. So does Montgomery on that offense. You bring those two back into pieces. You want guys that like where they're going so far and are on the upward trajectory. Those two are, I think you do that. Here's another one I think I question because we didn't bring him up. What do you do with N'Keal Harry? Because I think he had some flashes, and could be a good depth guy, but is there going to be room for him if you get the right pieces to land on that roster?
Well, and that's the thing. If Pringle was injury prone, do you keep this guy around instead of him and just build him into the rest of them and have him be a return guy, like a punt return guy, and get him some reps eventually later on? Because the other thing I'm reading up on now is Hopkins wants to go somewhere to win. So is Hopkins even want to go to the Bears thinking like they'd have to sell it to him, like show him that they're going to win soon? Because he might sit there and go, you know what? I just might go with the Patriots. Patriots are big on Hopkins right now. So like, does he go with the Patriots? Does he go to the not Jaguars, goes to like the Eagles? Can they somehow swing it, which I doubt? Does he go somewhere where they're going to win? I don't know.
Hard to say.
And he's owed a lot of money.
Yeah, let me get up the just to double check. So I need the Bears free agent list for this year because there's a few of them that are, I guess, like I said, it's more like fringe. Like, do you want to keep them around or not? So here's 2023's free agent list. Like I said, Pringle, Nick Morrow. I personally, it would be for depth. I don't want Nick Morrow starting next year. I thought he was average to below average in that in that linebacker core. You have N'Keal Harry, Angela Blackson, Ryan Griffin, DeAndre Houston Carson, which, depending on the rate, maybe. I think you throw him a bone just for how long he's been around. That's my opinion. But that's not guaranteed, of course. Patrick Scales, I think you should definitely bring him back. Let's see here: Matthew Adams, Dan Cruikshank, Dakota Dozier, Michael Schofield, maybe for depth. But again, that's a position that's very much up in the air right now, and it's going to probably have a lot of turnover anyway. Dante Pettis, another receiver. What do you do? He had a pretty solid, I think, back half of the season, but does he fit in this offense? Which maybe this is your answer. Mooney acts a lot more as like a slot guy in my eyes. And if you don't use Velus Jones as the depth, maybe Pettis is maybe that third stringer behind Velus Jones or something like that. Unless Velus carves out more of his niche like he was doing at the end of the year, I think that's what he'll turn into, is the depth. It's kind of hard to say because he had good production, like, for example, Velus, that is, and Dante did as well. But if you bring on guys to fill those spots through the draft and through what you hopefully are trades and signing acquisitions, that's another person I'm wondering, like, hey, does he fit in this roster? Do you make him a third stringer, maybe a practice squad guy, or does he move on? You know,
Mm-hmm.
which is the better question. Does he just move on, period, if you don't sign him on like that?
Did you see the top 5 free agent Bears targeting on 24/7 Sports?
Hey, top 5.
Their 5th one the Bears could go after is Jacoby Myers, wide receiver from New England. Levante David, linebacker from Tampa Bay. Jenkins, guard from the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
Javon Hargrave, defensive tackle from the Eagles. And then Orlando Brown from Kansas City, a nice offensive tackle, has been the top 5.
And you can probably offer Brown the money for that. They definitely have the cap to get someone of his caliber. I agree a lot on the Levant. Yeah,
$22.4 million for him.
Oh, I mean, they probably could get that. You know, it'd still be worth it for how much they want someone to protect the opposite side. You definitely need that. And then I also agree with, to me, I want Levante David because unless they draft, like I said, unless they go higher up on a linebacker in the draft, like second round, they pick up someone, you know. But credit, they could really use it across the board. So yeah, Levante David. I mean, dude's all pro or 32. That's the only problem. His age is going to be the thing that I think people will question. It is a rebuilding team, but if you want to get him for talk that 3 to 5 year period, nothing more like that. Get it that final stretch. I mean, guys like Bobby Wagner are still playing at a top level. David is still one of the better linebackers in this league, and they could use anyone right now. So depending on the rate he goes for, if it's in the reasonable range right now, which they're saying, I think it was 10 mil, like just under 10 mil was what they were talking on this 24/7 you're talking about. I think I think maybe he pushes a little higher than that. He's not going to make 20, but I think you can get him for a reasonable market value and get some good leadership in that linebacker core again that's needed. So.
Right.
Also helps for Jack Sanborn because getting a veteran guy like that he can lean on probably will help a ton as well.
Another list just has a ton of defensive players. One shocking one was Jamal Williams on there, and I don't think he would want to leave the Lions. But it's possible. Saquon Barkley's on there. Juju Smith's on there. Nelson Aguilar from Patriots is on there.
Yeah.
Dalton Schultz, tight end from the Cowboys, is on there.
I do agree with the Myers one from 24/7, by the way. But again, Myers to me, I don't know if he's a number one though. That's the thing that people are talking they want that definitive de facto gonna be game record type of guy. I don't know if Myers is that, the only reason I say that is unless you think that, which could be possible, unless you think that Justin Fields' play will elevate his game more than Mac Jones, which is definitely could be the case, depending on how the offense is run next year. But yeah.
Could also be a plan if they don't get Hopkins. If they're trying to trade, they don't get him, then it's okay, we still have these free agents we can go get. And then Mooney and Claypool can lead the way, and then these guys can kind of feel their way in, and then they go from there. Because there might be some wide receivers in the draft, not this year, but next year, that they can go out and get or play around with. But there's a lot of stuff they can do. I don't know if I'm fully on board with them trading Fields only because who are you going to get? That's my whole thing. Coming back to that. So I think they can play with anything else unless they figure out a way to get a different winner quarterback in right away, because who knows if Justin Fields is Brian Poles' guy, because didn't draft him, didn't prove himself as this consistent passer this year. And man, that could be alarming. Maybe it does make sense to keep paying his rookie contract the next year. And then in 2024, say, is there a different quarterback we can get out there in free agency or a trade when somebody demands a trade? The only thing I could see, which would be shocking, is if they got Carr because he wants out. But again, Carr would want to go somewhere he's going to win now. He's not going to go somewhere where it's like, I'm going to be rebuilding. So,
Yeah, I mean, Derek Carr, I mean, he's going to find a starting job. There's no doubt about it. It's just, I think like I said, I think he wants to go somewhere that he doesn't have to do as much, because something that was an interesting stat that I also didn't realize was his entire career, he has never had a top 10 defense supporting him on the other side of the ball. I guess he has not had that support. Now, I mean, credit, there's been years that he's been, a few of them have been average, but I mean, he's had some pretty good years. I mean, we were talking previous season, like, he was quietly back to his former status of how he was playing. So, I just thought that they shouldn't have hired Josh McDaniels, because they shouldn't have hired Josh McDaniels. It was a dumb choice. When they hired him, I said it's gonna be a horrible year, and sure enough, it was a bad year.
Yeah. I also want to point this out. Let's compare Justin Fields' second year to Mitch Trubisky's second year. Let's just have some fun here.
Okay.
Justin Fields was 17 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, 2,242 yards passing. Completion percentage was 60.4. Mitch Trubisky's second year with the Bears, 3,223 passing yards. His completion percentage was 66.6. He had 24 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. So second year so far, Mitch Trubisky has had a better second year than Mitch Trubisky. I just want to point that out there. But then I already know what's going to be said. Well, who did he throw to? Who did he have to throw to? And I don't want to hear because he has done nothing since he left. So if you want to know who he had on offense, see, I did a deep dive. I have everything already pulled up for a long time.
Right.
2018, we had Tariq Cohen, Jordan Howard, both running backs, Taylor Gabriel as a wide receiver, Allen Robinson as a receiver, and Trey Burton as the tight end. And that's who he had. So I don't want to hear how he had all these great guys around him compared to Justin Fields anymore. I'm just throwing that out there.
Fair enough. Fair enough, man.
Because
next year's a big year. It's year 3 to me is kind of how I decide make or break for a lot of quarterbacks usually.
And no, you had convinced me of that a long time ago, where I said, that actually makes sense. I'm on board with. I'm not a Justin Fields person, but he's not going anywhere unless they trade him this year, which I didn't even think was possible conversation. And you got me on board with that early on. And I said, okay, I don't think he'll progress as a passer this year. I had to look at it from a non-fan perspective. So I was all on board. I agree with you. That's a fair thing. If I think coaches should get 3 to 5 years, and maybe this type of situation, the player gets 3 years or so. That's fair. I think that's totally fair. But it's when I have to listen to these jackass guys on podcasts and this media and this and that, and they get thousands upon thousands of views, and I don't understand how, because they're doing exactly what we're doing. And they sit there and talk about how Justin Fields has arrived and he's the guy and it's everybody else's fault. And that was my big thing. Bears fans have become LeBron James fans, and this is what I mean by that. LeBron James can do no wrong in everybody's eyes at all. Man. I think that's how people look at him. And that's what turned me off from being a LeBron fan. I probably would have if LeBron didn't immediately start calling himself the king and the fans were all over. I would probably be sitting here going, oh yeah, he's whatever. Justin Fields just could do no wrong during the season. It was always somebody else's fault. Until the last 2 or 3 games, and correct me if I'm wrong, around the last 2 or 3 games, you probably saw the same people I do on Twitter, and they are on these shows, and they post this, and they go, it's not out of the realm for Ryan Poles to trade Justin Fields because he has not proven himself as a consistent passer. But you're the same people all year that talked about how he can throw, he's arrived, he is him, all this stuff that I don't understand because that's young kid lingo that I don't understand where that comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my biggest thing with this. And I've said this a million times. I watched Justin Fields at Ohio State have 3 first round wide receivers, offensive linemen, 2 running backs average 150 yards a game per running back. I watched him up against Indiana, who had a really good defense, and he struggled. He threw like 3 picks. I watched him versus Northwestern, who had a really, really good defense, and they held him under 150 yards passing or something. It was crazy. And I knew his weaknesses, but I also knew his strengths. His strength is moving the pocket, short throws, don't have him throw it deep all the time, blah, 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 blah. And, I've lost my train of thought now but the thing is, I just watch these people flip flop back and forth. I try to stay the same. Just blame everybody. That's all I'm saying. Blame everybody. Don't blame the whole O line because people don't understand when you have a pocket and the quarterback moves out of said pocket, the defensive linemen are going to move, which makes their job harder. Now, was all the sacks on Justin Fields? Absolutely not. They were on the linemen. There's plays where the linemen get beat. There's plays where Herbert gets blown backwards because he can't pass protect. And they're not on Justin Fields. Those are on everybody else. But he also, I think, led the league in holding the ball. Like he won't throw it. And his body's going to get broken down because of all the running. And so I guess the question is, are people saying that he has arrived and he's that good because all the highlights we're seeing are these 60-yard runs, these 70-yard runs, which are fantastic. He's not a running back playing quarterback. He's an athlete playing quarterback, in my opinion. But is the definition of being good because he has these explosive plays, or they just want to hide the fact that he's not a consistent passer? But when you bring up consistent passer, they go, well, look who he's throwing to, which I've shown. The New York Giants have more drops. The Jaguars have more drops. Mm-hmm. So is it the receivers? Is it because he's not throwing them the ball? Is it because they're running the ball more, which is all highly possible? That's where I get frustrated as a fan watching this and listening to these people, which I've stopped listening to them altogether. I've unfollowed Adam Hogue and all of them because I just can't take it no more of the hypocrisy of flip-flopping back and forth. And then they think it's crazy of the fact to trade Justin Fields. I don't think it's crazy. I think it's in the realm of possibility of they could sit there and go, hey, you know what? We are rebuilding. We're scraping it all away.
Yeah. The only reason that's getting brought up that I've seen that is legitimate from what I've read is the rebuild process of kind of matching up contracts, or I guess getting your own guy as well. So Justin Fields is in his.
Is it 4 years?
Well, no, it's 4 with a 5th-year option. That's how rookie contracts go. But
that's right. That's right.
My thing was that a lot of times when you see rebuilds with a new GM and a new coach, usually you want the QB to be in on that first big, like basically brand new on the ground floor if you can.
Mm-hmm.
That's new on the spot with the rest of your young talent coming up. Fields is 2 years in and already going on year 3. So the argument is, well, his contract isn't matching up with the rest of the rookie deals we'll bring in or everyone else. What if we bring in someone that is also on the said rookie timeline and do it that way? And then, others have argued that, actually, it's funny. Rich Eisen on his own show, him and his other staff had arguments on this. Rich believes they should keep Fields. A few of their other guys on that team do not think so, and that they should trade for Bryce Young, or they should go for Bryce Young and then trade away Justin Fields. And I think some people believe that Bryce Young's a better passer coming out of college right now, which, that depends. How does the pro days go? I don't know. And I know that publicly Ryan Poles has said it would take someone blowing me away. Well, we'll see how pro days go. Cause right now your best option is Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. There's Will Levis talk out there. I don't think Will Levis is your number one overall. Most likely it's Bryce Young. So the question is Bryce Young that effing good to where he has to go, you know what, for the greater good, I'm going to pull the trigger. We'll see. Because again, if it's all about stockpiling picks, I mean, I'll be honest with you, they'll get value out of Justin Fields if they were to trade Justin Fields. Like that's bound to
Yeah.
happen. So I don't know if they'll do that, but honestly, that's why it's brought because everything's on the table. When you're 3-14 and you've basically stripped everything down to the bottom of the barrel, most part, everything still should be considered on the table. Does it mean it's the right decision? No, but you still should have that talk. That's why the Fields trade talk comes up. Like people still should have that talk, even if most people don't believe it's the right decision. You still should have that as a discussion in your room when you're debating the future of your franchise and what you think is a sustainable way of building a winning roster.
Right. Because the debate is we can't evaluate Fields right now, so that's why they keep him because of who he had. And the
Correct.
argument, I will say, the argument is it's a double-edged sword. I could sit here, you could be all on, you're more on Justin Fields than I am, so you could sit there and say,
Right. I believe that I saw progress this year overall. I think that next year there's potential to have that go up again, but it's going to hinge on next year because there is that much that they are banking on or bringing guys in. If their plan goes the way it goes and that they are going to upgrade everything, if things don't work out next year, that's when I will go, okay, we need to figure this out because that's how I was with Mitch Trubisky. 2019 season, after that, I was like, yeah, no, we need to get the hell out of here. Like, it didn't go the way we thought it did. That's where I'm at. It's the same deal after year 2 of Mitch, where it's like, okay, this was Bears fandom too, by the way. It seems like they forgot this, but this is the same way we were with Mitch Trubisky after season 2. Dude's a Pro Bowl alternate. Dude's got slinging better numbers. Dude's looking pretty solid. We should have another good year next year. So I expect an up and up trend. If I don't see that, I'm going to be the same way I was with Mitch. We need to get moving on because the more time you waste with a quarterback like that, if he's not progressing the way you need him to be, the more you need to make decisions, especially with the setup you have currently with the amount of cap and all those young talents you're going to be bringing in. You cannot screw this up. So the first sign of trouble with that, you move to me. If next year doesn't go well, the year after you move on. If it does, well, great. Then we have the QB for sure. But there is going to be pressure next year, even with the good praises from some of the leaps he took and the run game that he brought to the table. There is going to be that pressure. So, but to me, you should give him a third year. I understand your point though, where it's like you see stuff. I think you should be allowed to critique QB play. I know we're fans, but even if experts have brought things up, you still should be able to openly discuss it. There's no love-hate choice. You can choose the middle option. You can dissect what you think of a player. Just keep in mind that he is a player and that you are a fan. You don't go on the field.
Right. Because my whole thing is if we can evaluate during COVID, coaches got fired, guys got cut, guys got traded in college and NFL. If you can do that during the COVID year where everything is screwed up and people talked about, whatever, then I can do it now. You know what I mean? Like that was my big thing. And then the thing is for me, the double-edged sword comes into, well, you can't look at him because he doesn't have the quote-unquote receivers. Well, I can make the argument if he's that good, he should be able to build up the receivers around him and blah, blah, blah. So that's why to me, and I'll say this now, and I'll make a clip of this. That's why this argument can never be won or lost. I can sit here and dig my feet into the ground saying he's not that great of a passer consistently. I've seen him make good throws, but I said that in college. Consistently good thrower, he was not. I've watched him overthrow a post by 12 yards in college to a first round pick, a wide receiver. I've watched him do it with the Bears. But then there's times he makes amazing throws, like the Vikings second half, boom, boom, boom. Like, look at this, he can do it. But it's a lose-lose argument because you are better when you have good receivers. But receivers can also be better when you have Peyton Manning or Tom Brady throwing you the ball, which is few far in between. So to me, that's why this argument always should be, it's a loss. But I'm sick and tired of, I think I'm also jealous. These guys get thousands of views when they do these shows. And I'm like, look what you're saying though, in week 3 compared to week 15. You have now just completely changed your thought process because you were maybe that's fandom talking, and that's
I think
fine.
I think it's part of that, and just kind of seasons are sometimes emotional roller coasters. So I guess I add that as a tribute too. Um, I just think that you know there are opinions that can be changed, but some things don't always just immediately change on a dime.
Right.
That's my thing. If you're like a week to week guy where it's like that, that's when I go, all right, maybe we need to reevaluate how you're looking and talking sports takes. But if your opinion to me changes over the season, fair. I mean, that's how a season usually works. I think that's pretty. I think that's a pretty good way of doing it. But like when I hear week in week out stuff where it's flip flops, that's when I got problems. If you're flipping flopping back and forth every other week, then yeah, I'm not. I'm gonna leave the room at that point because
Well, I think it
then it's
also
just going. Then it's just going with the narrative at that point. It's not actually doing analysis.
also depends on what you're flip flopping to. And I think what
Yeah.
made me mad was how they talked about how a great of a passer he actually is, or how much better he's gotten, but the receivers aren't helping him. But then as the season went along, the receivers didn't change, besides a couple because they were injured. They didn't
Mm-hmm.
change. Then all of a sudden, then they want to talk about, well, he's not a great consistent passer. All of a sudden, like that's where I got a little frustrated. I can respect a season long change. Like if you sat there and said, I plan on him being growth as a passer more consistent, and as the season goes on, you go, well, no, he wasn't. It proved to me. I just think the definition of a good quarterback is excitement, and he's breaking away on these plays. I'm not taking away that he's athletic. I'm not taking away that he's smart. I'm not taking away that he is, an amazing athlete. But the again, I think if it wasn't so hyped up about how great of a passer he was, I wouldn't be mad if everybody was just kind of like, yeah, he has to grow this year. Or if they took your take, like, hey, it's going to be rough this year. He's not going to be this amazing Peyton Manning passer. Next year, though, he grows into that. We're sitting pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
We have a guy that can move in the pocket a little bit. But I do think that I did say this. Go back if you watch the game. The Atlanta Falcon game is when the running I think started to take its toll a little bit. You watch that he's limping around. That's when he got hurt, I think, a little bit later on. Then he had a big, amazing run later on. I can't remember what game it was, but he had a big 60, 70, 80-yard run, whatever that was. If you watch him after that run, he is like grabbing his thighs because he's like, that's a lot to ask him to do.
Yeah.
And you can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
My whole point to people was we still lost those games when he was running. So it's proven that
You're
we're not going to win.
so this is I can't believe I'm even saying this because of just how the season started. Which again, here's a fun little opinion changing type of discussion that people have had in the NFL too. We talk a lot about the Giants because to me, I think the Giants, if you're talking about a team that swung from bad to, taking the best of its parts and playing to the best of its strengths, it did it this year.
Mhm.
And it's amazing because Daniel Jones is playing at least his end of the year play is kind of what I want to see Justin Fields evolve more into, if possible. I'm talking like 250 plus passing. You get like 50 or so yards rushing, whether it's on broken plays or on some design runs every now and then, and a few touchdowns. Like
Mhm.
it's funny because I never thought I'd say that about Daniel Jones after recent years, but he kind of is showing to me that's the avenue I want to see Justin Fields evolve into. Just give him more talent this year to throw to, and there you go. And you're also at that point exposing him to less hits if you build the line as well and you have less runs. He still is a threat. That's the thing. He still could be a running threat. It's just as we all
Mhm.
want to say, we want to see him throw more through the air, thus see like a Jones or like a Josh Allen type of like progression. Lamar Jackson after his MVP season, like stuff like that. That's what I think people want to see him go towards, things like that. Less running, more where you're getting the throwing and you're not getting beaten up all the time for having to do that.
Right. But on top of that, again, because I'm going to be the devil's advocate, if he can learn to not hold on to the ball for 3 or 4 seconds,
And
this
yes, that will
helps.
help too. That helps too because there are times. So
But yes, I do agree that people wrote off Daniel Jones until this year. Then all of a sudden, he only threw 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. But if you're going to throw 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions and still find your way into the playoffs, you're sitting pretty good. So if the Bears can really get that O line going, the run game going, get back to what we've said for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, play action stuff with Justin Fields to get the ball out quick, force him to get the ball out quick. If you don't have it, just get rid of the ball. I think that will help get into a rhythm of like, I got to get rid of the ball quick. I got to get rid of the ball quick. Then you just get Claypool more involved. I think that's a safety blanket. Darnell Mooney, like I think there's already things there to work with, believe it or not. Like I think there's some things there that can grow so we don't have to go out. Maybe you get one more receiver. Then if Fields grows into a passer and they keep him, I want to be wrong. That's what I'm saying. I'm not doing this to be right. I want to be wrong. I want Justin Fields to do good because I'm a Bears fan. Next year he churns. I want to be wrong, and people can come at me for it. That I'm sure people will do that, but I want to be wrong. I want him to be a really good passer, but I can't sit here and think that him running the ball puts us in a better position because it doesn't. Like because he's going to get hurt,
not for the
he's gonna
long
get tired.
term.
Right.
Yeah,
it's flashy. It's fun.
Definitely a short-term thing. That's the thing.
Right. I think because I've watched Lamar Jackson run and they didn't like look what's happened now. He was hurt and he didn't play in the playoff game.
Well, that's funny because I also said, I just said, good things about Lamar with, post his MVP and moving on post that. And, sure enough, part of the discussion around his contract negotiations is durability issues. So,
yep. That's why I want to get ahead of the game.
To, getting hit.
Well, that's why they got to get ahead of it now because they saw what happened. So I don't know. I think ultimately it came down to what's your definition of a successful quarterback year? What's your definition of good quarterback? Is it the passing? Is it the running? Is it these explosive plays? And I think to some of these media guys, these podcast guys, it was posting that it's fun to post clips of him running. You could find a clip of him making a good pass, but I can find clips of him making horrible decisions. I can find clips of whatever. If he just takes that next jump next year, I hop on here and say I was wrong, and I'm glad he's doing better because it's a win-win for me. Bears win, or they move on and find a guy that can come in and do it. Ultimately,
yeah.
Very heated talk there, but we got through it. It's okay. We made through it.
That's how it works, This is all, like I said, all stuff. When you are 3-14, when you are the worst team in the NFL, everything's on the table. That's how this works.
Which I don't think we. Did we say they'd be the worst team? Or
no, I thought they would finish 7-10. When someone asked me earlier this year, my honest opinion was they were going to be 7-10, at best 9-8. So I thought it was going to be a better year. Credit injuries derailed part of that, but I thought they were going to finish 7-10. It did not go as planned because things just fell off the tracks after like the midway point of the year for the most part.
Yeah, sorry I interrupted you. I'm good at interrupting people.
That's fine. It's fine. I'm used to it. I'm used to it, man.
But I will say you had convinced me early on to look at it next year. If they don't move him this year, if something doesn't happen, to look at it next year, because it's fair is fair. Look at it next year. I would just like a backup that could be there to push him. You know what I mean? Like to really like. That's why to me, like a Gardner Minshew could come in, and if he's a good teammate, push him to be better. Maybe he gives him a little, whatever. And then if it's not working out with Fields, you have someone that can come in and kind of pick up and be that pocket passer that they want right now. So that's always why I pushed for that. And I want some swag. I want some swag in Chicago. I think he would be the perfect guy to come in his headband and aviators and his jean shorts, living out of his van, like just something to fit in there.
No, he'd be great for social media. I would love, and again, I think he'd just be better for the QB room. Nathan Peterman's going into free agency, by the way, this year. And honestly, I think that's like I agree with you on that in that stint. If you're talking pieces to do, like why not? Like upgrade the QB room. You're might as well upgrade everything because I mean, QB room, D line, especially the D line. Jesus, they need some help on D
Oh,
line and edge so badly. And a lot of that's going to come in the draft. I mean, if Will Anderson is their choice, like that's the thing, that's part of it goes back to the draft, like the whole number one pick decision. Like if Will Anderson impresses that much, do you pick up Will Anderson? You just instantly fix that, or at least instantly add a playmaker like that. We'll find out,
mhm.
But I mean, they have so many options to fix. That's where it's like, you know,
Where
everything
do you
needs
start?
upgrades, including that QB room. you know,
Yes, yes. I know a guy
and
in
besides
San
Fields, that is. Yeah.
Francisco. I know a guy in San
Oh
Francisco.
no, no way.
You
You
know,
think? But do you see them? Do you see them paying? Because Garoppolo is going to go somewhere and get a reasonable deal.
well, that's a whole other thing of what the 49ers decide to do because now you had Jimmy Garoppolo who was playing well till he got hurt. Now you got Purdy who's playing well.
Brock
It's
Purdy's
you
playing
think
pretty
Trey
well.
Lance you think Trey Lance is the future. So now you got this big decision. Now out of all of them, they'll get rid of Jimmy G because he's older.
Yeah.
But now they'll get something for him.
Yeah.
That's the thing. And where's he going to go? I don't know where he's going to go. Does somebody out there need a quarterback right now where he's going to go and play, like right now? And if they're going to Arlington, where he's from, maybe they could throw him a bone. Maybe he'll go back up. Maybe he'll go to be a backup.
I think it all depends on what a deal he takes and what he thinks is possible. Because I mean, if he wants to do something like last year, where like he gets paid like $9 million to sit behind someone, and maybe he gets to jump in and do his thing, then I mean that would easily make it one of the better QB rooms in the NFL because Garoppolo could be a starter in a lot of places right now, or with the 49ers for that matter, if they want. But yeah, we'll see. Because I mean, he's going to be a free agent. To me, like Garoppolo, there's too much QB competition now. Like Brock Purdy has cemented himself as like, hey, I'll be a cheaper option that can basically run Garoppolo's position, possibly even better than Garoppolo. And I might be even challenging for the starting spot next year because of the fact that, Trey Lance is out, but I've already shown you I can do all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So like there's that. But I mean, the Bears, to me, the Bears shouldn't be in the market for Garoppolo. I think Minshew's your better market, like you're talking. Someone
Right.
that's a solid backup QB that also has been in the ringer for a few years. And as you said, if things were to go like nuclear south, you can at least put someone in where you could at least say, screw it, let's take a shot with him,
And he'd be cheap. Not cheap. Like
and
they
he'd
wouldn't
be
pay him
cheap.
as much.
He would also be cheap. That too.
Unless they go get Baker Mayfield. There you go. Baker Mayfield.
Mm-hmm.
Pay him $8 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
While Gardner Minshew's last pay was $677,000. Gardner Minshew's probably the best option. We did it. I think we made it through
I think so.
without you killing me about my Fields takes, but I had to get that off my chest.
It's fine. I mean, that's all pent up stuff, but it's kind of hard when you basically the main thing you can say is, well, hey, we have a bunch of stuff they need to basically need to pick up, but a lot
That's
of
gonna be the
decisions to
question.
be made. Yeah, it'll be a busy
That'll be the
off
question.
season. I you know,
Yeah. I keep interrupting you because I'm an asshole.
you're fine. You're not an asshole.
That'll be the big question for the Bears is where do they decide to start and fix? Like you said, is the D line worse than the O line? Is the wide receiver core as bad as they think it is? I personally think the D line is worse. That's a horrible situation.
Yeah,
They got no pressure. They have a hodgepodge of linebackers, like we said. I think they need to get a safety to help with Eddie Jackson because if he's injury prone, they get a guy to back up. So I've done some mock drafts, and that's one of them that pops up, kind of helps you out. One of them's a safety. It wants you to draft a safety. So I think that's kind of where they're leaning towards is they have to get a backup. So be curious to see where the Bears start. yeah, there'll be more to talk about. We have a long off season. A lot of stuff to do with the Bears as moving forward. Lots of fun things. I've done about 12 mock drafts in 2 days, and I think I've only not traded Justin Fields once.
Hmm.
If you want me to be honest with you,
There you go.
uh, I've only gotten a B plus, so I'm not very good, but we got it. I did pretty good. Any final thoughts as we slowly wrap this up? Then I've got my Justin Fields anger all out.
Sit back, relax, and try to relax as you read every possible mock draft take that you'll ever see on social media because I'm or trade, which I do want to end the show. There is someone who has suggested, what if the Bears trade for Justin Jefferson? And by that I say, if Minnesota does that, it's their fault. But that one, no way. They're not going to land Justin Jefferson. I'm sorry. I don't see it.
I don't see the. I don't see any because I thought the same thing about like trading with the Packers for somebody. I don't. Neither of those two teams are going to trade
You
with
don't
the
trade
Bears.
interdivisional trades are stupid rare, and especially for talent that level. It just unless it was that bad, Minnesota, I guarantee you they would trade outside their division in a heartbeat. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and to me that's like a logic thing where people are like, "Well, what if we get him?" It's like, "Well, you won't because that's not going to happen." So, sorry,
Here's
they
an
won't
offensive
do
lineman.
that.
Here's an offensive lineman on a positive note they could need to try to get from Notre Dame. Jarrett Patterson. He had 1,688 pass block snaps, zero
Mm-hmm.
sacks allowed. That's a
I know
guy
exactly what you're
right
talking
there.
about. Yeah, yeah. You guys like that?
That's that's going to be the question. We're right back. I feel like we're back in 2019 or 2020 where it's like we need an offensive line and we need it
We do need
now.
an. We need it bad. You know.
But they decided to get Justin Fields, and so we're in this situation again.
Yeah. Well, time will tell. It's time to rebuild. That's the best way you can put it. It's
They
officially construction season.
literally for a new stadium and for the team.
New stadium. I actually kind of
Lori
want
Light.
that. I actually kind of want that render that's on the lakefront. By the way.
Oh, that video they put out to try to save Soldier Field and keep the Bears.
Yeah.
It's too late. It's too late for that.
I mean, I think it's too late, but I like the render.
Oh, it looks
I
awesome,
mean,
but it's just too
putting
little,
the
too
pillars
late.
in. I mean, putting the pillars inside and everything. I mean, you already have desecrated Soldier Field's original look. You might as well just go full bore now.
Here's the thing: it's too little, too late. If they because the Bears have asked to change stuff, and they asked about it before the Arlington thing, and Lori Lightfoot and the city of Chicago wanted to fight it, wanted all this money, wanted this and that, and all the BS politic crap that they pull. So the Bears said, "See ya, we're going over here." And now that they thought that it wasn't going to happen and it's real, no, hold on a second. No, like look what we can
Oh
do.
yeah. I mean, they
But
haven't even figured
but
out they haven't even figured out the funding. So like, they're still like, yeah, it's not going to happen. I don't. I will. I agree. It won't. But you know,
oh,
a
it's
man
cool.
that
Don't get me
wants
wrong.
to a man that wants them to stay in the city can dream. So
Oh no, like if that happened, if that was shown and the Arlington thing wasn't a part of it, full born. But here's the problem
I mean,
now.
otherwise, look, they don't stay in the city. I'm just advocating that they get a USFL team. They bring the Chicago Blitz back and they play in Soldier Field. So,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
or the NFL, as it's been rumored supposedly, or the NFL says screw it and they add a second Chicago team because they want all their markets that are top that are that big to have two teams. So, you know,
Well, when they got Roger Goodell involved in the Arlington Heights thing, they saw dollar signs because they can have the stadium, they can have a casino built, they can have hotels built because now they have this land and they can do it. Um, you figure out the train that goes like just from Chicago to
yeah,
Arlington
I've
and
heard
figure
all
out like,
about the train. There's going to be a train station built that goes from downtown. Good luck.
oh, I've hit a nerve for stadiums.
Well, I mean, credit. I don't live in Chicago. I follow what goes on. I get it. the taxes would be stupider if you did it and did a rebuild or a revamp like that. It's a pipe dream thing. I like them being in the city. That principle of like them being right there in downtown. That does mean something, at least to me. But I get why they can't do that. Arlington makes the most sense. It's gonna happen. I've accepted it. So, yeah.
But yes, I agree. I agree that Justin Fields needs next year, and I agree that it'd be cool if they were in the city. But take me back to PlayStation 2 days and bring me back my Chicago team for Arena Football League game. Bring me back
Yeah.
those
Oh
times.
yeah. There we go.
That's a great possibility they could do. They could have XFL stuff go on there. They could have a lot go on with Soldier Field if the Bears left.
They'll find a purpose. Like I said, there's enough sports properties now. I mean, hell, unless for some reason they want to move them back. Technically, the Chicago Fire play there right now.
Mm-hmm.
So right now they'd be the main tenant. I don't know if that's enough to sustain it, but like, if anything, you can still use it for downtown concert and events. Like having a arena downtown like that still has value. So it wouldn't be like sitting there. Plus, if you let it sit there and be an eyesore in the middle of Chicago, that'd be a massive problem for taxpayers just to see it watch to decay like that.
Oh yeah, so they would hop on and Chicago Fire would be there. I guarantee USFL might get involved because they would probably sit there and go, "Hey, like
Well,
the
that's what I'm hoping. See, me being a USFL guy. I want I want the Blitz to return. That's the thing. Bring them back. The leagues are sustainable as long as they move out to the cities and they find an owner that's in the Chicago area that maybe doesn't have NFL cash but has like decent cash, and the city gives them a fair rate to rent, which to me they should if they're getting a new tenant and they want football back in there. There you have it.
That's a whole other episode we could do and present it to Chicago and be like, look what you could do.
Yeah, that'd be another like 2-3 years off, and the USFL needs to keep on showing it will sustain itself. So time will tell,
Yeah.
Or the XFL. I mean, hell, if it can sustain itself, same deal. If one of these alt leagues sustains itself and they find a way to Chicago, to me, there's room for it. They could pull it off.
Yeah. That'd be okay. Or the Jaguars are going to move to Soldier Field.
I don't know, man. Maybe with Lawrence there, I think they're going to get ticket sales back up.
Well, because the owner went to the University of Illinois and flies in out of Chicago and has ties.
True, but I will also counter with that owner is also investing in the area around the arena right now, or in the stadium right now.
Oh, money means nothing to him.
Oh well, fair enough. All right, I'm good. Stadium talk is over. I complete my talk for this session.
Or Elon Musk buys it.
Ew. I don't know. Maybe not ew. I have no idea. I guess ew just because ew, whatever.
Jay Cutler will buy it and start a team. Jay Cutler back in Chicago.
I know he doesn't have the money for that, but
no, he doesn't.
No, he does not.
And that's his podcast too. He hasn't done an episode. I miss it so.
He hasn't done an episode recently?
Not since September.
Wow, dude's that's a bit of a break. Okay. Maybe he's not feeling it.
He was doing well too.
Oh, I bet he is. I'm just saying there's probably a lot of stuff you can do with podcasts. I'm just shocked he hasn't talked since September. Crazy. It's crazy.
Well, all right. Well, Zach, thanks for coming back for Bear Down. It's back. We will, when my life isn't as crazy soon, there'll be off-season stuff to update on, talk about, blah, 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 blah. Trade Justin Fields, blah, 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 all that stuff. I'm going to keep attacking. You know what? I might start a Twitter beef with that Chicago podcast group. You know what? I think I might start some beef until they hire me.
Yeah.
No, I like the Cubs show. I like that one. The Cubs one is nice.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. They have some solid stuff, though. Yeah.
I think it's the Bears one that's irritating.
Just be more reasonable, Just think. Slow down. Process what you're saying. Revisit what you have said earlier in the season or the previous week, for that matter.
Yeah, or the previous hour when you were doing something. Like, think about what was being said. But anyway,
maybe jot down some notes. Personal recorder. It's pretty easy. So,
check out Zach's other podcast, Inside the Wall USFL podcast, because USFL is coming back. It'll be here before we know it. I think that's all you have, right?
Yeah, I mean, Inside the Walls and then USFL podcast, which, I mean, that thing's popping off. We're getting ready for season 2 of the USFL. So, say you're hearing me talk about the Blitz. If you're curious about that league, hey, look, it is definitely coming back for a year 2. So if you were worried about spring football, don't worry, it's here, and it's also going to be at more areas of play, including Memphis. Here they're going to play in Detroit this year, so that should be fun.
Oh.
It's either going to be at Eastern Michigan or at Ford Field, from the looks of it.
That's cool.
So yeah,
getting college, like more college bases. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, exactly.
My plan is to watch more of that this year than last year. So that's my plan.
Oh, trust me, you'll like it. You'll like it. It's good.
But that'll wrap this up. Go check out Zach's, all of his other stuff. We'll be back with more Bear Down stuff. Zach, thanks for coming back. Thanks for everybody watching or listening, all that good stuff. And we will see you guys next time.